Hello everyone! If you think we are anywhere near the point of the clown decade where things are getting better before they get worse, all I have to do is point you up north to Scotland, the land of the brave. And of course, as the old saying goes, there is a very fine line between brave and stupid, and unfortunately, the Scots don't seem to have managed to find a difference yet. Or really, I shouldn't say Scots, because really it's just the SNP members, though in reality, most of those people are Scottish too. So what have the SNP done? Well, after Nicola Sturgeon was kicked out for trying to push through the gender recognition bill, which appears to be where the current limit of wokery is going to get you at the moment, but trust me, it is going to go beyond that barrier soon, the SNP has decided that voting in Humza Yousaf as the SNP leader would be a very good idea. And yes, we are talking about that Humza Yousaf.
But why are we so surprised when the most senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white? White, 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 people who are white, white, white.
I can't highlight enough how autistic he is.
Yes, he is also one of those quite annoying politicians that claims to be Scottish, and then at every opportunity lets you know that he's not Scottish in a lot of other ways, such as when being oathed into the Scottish Parliament decides to say his oath in Urdu.
मैं हमजा यूसुफ ईमानदारी और सच्ची दिल से ये ऐलान करता हूँ.
Which I used to say, oh, it doesn't really matter, but really, at the heart of it, you are saying this particular part of my history and culture is a lot more important than the history and culture of the people that I'm about to represent. And I just don't particularly think that is a good look. But yes, that Humza Yousaf is now leader of the SNP and therefore Scotland's First Minister. Humza Yousaf is to succeed Nicola Sturgeon as SNP leader and Scotland's First Minister after a vote of party members. Mr Yousaf defeated rivals Kate Forbes and Ash Regan in a leadership contest that exposed deep divisions within the party. The 37-year-old is the first Muslim to lead a major UK party. He is said to be confirmed as the first ethnic minority leader of a devolved government on Tuesday. Mr Yousaf is currently Scotland's Health Secretary and was widely assumed to be Miss Sturgeon's preferred successor, although she did not explicitly back any of the candidates in the contest. In other words, he is probably the worst thing for Scotland at the moment. Just to keep you all updated on the process, this was the second vote for the SNP leader, as it was whittled down to Kate Forbes and Humza Yousaf after Ash Regan managed to get 11% of the vote, and we got the magic Brexit numbers of about 52 to 48% in favour of Humza Yousaf from the second vote, but I don't believe they're going to have a redo of the vote. However, after that, the SNP leader will face a vote in the Scottish Parliament, which he is certain to win on Tuesday, before becoming Scotland's sixth First Minister, so that vote will be today, and I'm not going to cover it because it's obvious he'll win. He had been the clear favourite with the bookmakers during the contest, although polling expert Professor John Curtis said ahead of the results that Ms Forbes appeared to be more popular with the Scottish voters as a whole, and as I say, unfortunately you are led by a bunch of psychopaths up there in Scotland. Ms Forbes, a member of the Evangelical Free Church of Scotland, has been attacked by the SNP hierarchy during the contest over her socially conservative views on issues such as gay marriage, abortion and having children outside of marriage. And having these opinions probably explains why she is very popular with the average Scottish voter, because the average person is somewhat socially conservative, and more socially conservative than your average even Tory politician. And given that Humza is the Sturgeon continuity candidate, and Sturgeon's popularity was going down the drain, it will not be surprising if the SNP gets absolutely blown out the water by Scottish Labour next election, because his main policy positions are just insane. For example, on independence, Mr Yousaf has distanced himself from the de facto referendum plan favoured by his predecessor Nicola Sturgeon, and instead suggesting setting up regional assemblies to discuss the way ahead on independence, ending the need for a special conference on the issue. He has also sought to avoid talking about the process of how independence could happen, and instead focus on the policy he believes will enable. Mr Yousaf explained if independence becomes the settled will of the Scottish people, then those political obstacles will disappear. During his victory speech, Humza Yousaf said, "It is now time for the SNP to come together and deliver independence." He said, "Leadership elections, by their very nature, can be bruising. However, the SNP, we are a family. Over the last 5 years, we may have been competitors or supporters of different candidates. We are no longer Team Humza or Team Ash or Team Kate, we are one team. We will be the team, we will be the generation that delivers independence for Scotland." In other words, instead of actually fighting it on political battlegrounds, independence will be talked about by regional assemblies. Okay, I don't know how that's going to deliver it, but we'll see where it gets you, Humza. Next up is the gender recognition reform. There are also clear differences on what to do next to the Gender Recognition Reform Bill after a Section 35 order from the UK government blocked legislation passed by the Scottish Parliament in December. Mr Yousaf, however, said he believed defending legislation passed in Holyrood was a point of principle for any nationalist, an example of the progressive policies that have put independence within touching distance. In other words, an incredibly unpopular bill for the general public is going to be the battleground over whether independence actually gets pushed through or whether devolution gets destroyed. And thankfully, the odds are in the Unionist favour, so thank God for that. Next, on health, given that he was health minister, he has said, despite holding the post, Humza Yousaf was often at his most vulnerable during debates on NHS issues, most notably over the National Care Service. Unveiled by Mr Yousaf, the NCS, would bring adult social care under the control of a single NHS-style service managed by local boards. And no doubt it has gone horribly, horribly wrong. Criticised by opposition parties and organisations, including the Scottish TUC, Parkinson's UK and Commonweal, Mr Yousaf has now said that he is open to reforming the planned service, so it probably did go badly. So his track record here appears to be he wants to be even more manic than Nicola Sturgeon on both independence and, let's just call them, woke topics for now, I suppose, which he sort of got her ousted, but he decided to double down. And not only that, but he has a horrible track record, and it's not even the worst thing that he's done when it comes to Health Secretary. He also used to be the Justice Secretary, in which he oversaw, drafted and pushed through the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Bill, which effectively disallowed you from having your own contentious opinions in your own home. In fact, here is a direct quote from Humza Yousaf. If you are stirring up religious hatred against Jews with the intent of stirring up religious hatred in your private dwelling, with your children in the room, with friends that you've invited, I would get out of there as fast as possible now if I didn't think that Humza Yousaf was going to tank the SNP. Which you're right, would then be prosecuted by law, should the person who, with the intent of stirring up hatred and the behaviour was threatening or abusive, should they not be culpable? Should they not receive some sort of criminal sanction? In other words, Humza Yousaf wanted this bill to put Big Brother in your house and find out if you had said anything nasty. Which, I'm not being funny, but how many dinner parties have anyone in my audience been to where they start talking about Jews? But this article then goes on to say, Yousaf is the Scottish Justice Minister and was speaking yesterday in response to a question about his Hate Crime and Public Order Bill. The legislation aims to create an offence of stirring up hatred against a long list of protected characteristics: race, colour, nationality, or ethnic or national origins, age, disability, religion, or, in the case of a social or cultural group, perceived religious affliction, sexual orientation, transgender identity, variations in sex characteristics. Just a load of waffle. Speaking or writing or behaviour in a threatening or abusive manner will get you done, except in the case of race and nationality, where being merely insulting will be enough to land you in the dock. Yousaf has agreed to drop a clause that would have prosecuted even those who didn't intend to incite hatred. So he originally wanted that to be in law, and no doubt will try and push for it again. In fact, that part was criticised by the Catholic Church and even people who were working for him, because it technically made libraries illegal in case they had books such as ones about the Holocaust that had examples of anti-Semitism in it. But everything else remains, from provisions for prosecuting actors and directors of plays, including stand-up comedies, hence Frankie Boyle is no longer funny, to a new crime of possessing inflammatory material. I mean, I'd be screwed if I was in Scotland. I've got Mein Kampf, I've got the Communist Manifesto, I've even got 1984, so I'm flagged up on Prevent. Anyone sent down under law could face up to 7 years in prison. So yeah, thank God I don't live in Scotland. I would be absolutely screwed. But luckily, thanks to all this, and due to the fact that he does seem to have quite common and very inappropriate blunders at some points, like what he said to some Ukrainian women while he was having a photo op with them.
Okay. So one question I have is, where are all the men?
God, that awkward laugh from all the women there. Anyway, due to all this, it appears that Labour and the Tories are looking to Scotland for a victory of some kind, or at least kick the SNP out, according to this Times article, which says when Humza Yousaf was declared leader of the SNP, the reaction of many in the Labour Party was unmitigated jubilation. It's the best possible result for us, a senior Labour figure said. People have already made up their minds about him. Once people have formed an impression of a politician, it's very hard to shift it. We saw that with Ed Miliband. People think he's a failed politician who can't run the health service. Which, as we've just gone through, that's true. The calculation for Labour is simple. During Yousaf's tenure as Scotland's Health Secretary, waiting lists have soared to record levels, something the party plans to weaponise before the next general election. The election of Yousaf, Labour believes, will enable it to ram home criticisms of the SNP's domestic record on health and crime. Because yes, drug deaths in Scotland have been absolutely palpable. And even with minimum pricing on alcohol, alcoholics are still rampant, but they're slightly poorer now because now they either have to drive over to Carlisle to get their alcohol or they just buy it for a higher price in Scotland. And apparently there was a similar reaction in the Tory party, where Kate Forbes, the runner-up, had been viewed as the bigger threat. It's played out very well for us, a senior government source said. Kate Forbes was the risk. She was the centre ground, business-friendly vote. With Humza, it's business as usual, which is very true. Though I do find it funny that they think Kate Forbes, who was attacked for her conservative views, is the problem. Probably because the Conservative Party know people have conservative views out there. They just refuse to actually try and get that vote. So I don't know why they try and push to try and get that vote. Both Labour and the Conservatives plan to borrow many of the attack lines that Forbes used during the bitterly divisive leadership contest, when she repeatedly highlighted his record in government. When he was Transport Secretary, she argued the trains were always late. When he was Justice Secretary, the police were in crisis. As Health Secretary, he oversaw record NHS waiting lists. What makes you think you can do a better job as First Minister, she asked him. More of the same won't cut it. But the senior Tory put it even more bluntly. He keeps saying he's been in government for 10.5 years. No one can think of a single thing he's got right. They can think of an awful lot of things that have gone wrong. He's anti-business, anti-monarchy, and he's very strongly anti the UK state. And perhaps next general election we will see that that is not the way forward for Scottish politics. If there is a perfect representation of how I think Humza Yousaf is going to do as SNP leader, then I think this clip sums it up perfectly.
I can't highlight enough how autistic he is.
But we will have to wait and see. I can guarantee one thing, before Humza Yousaf is kicked out from the Scottish Parliament, I can guarantee to you that things are going to get worse up there. There is no mercy in the clown decade until at least 2025, and even then, things probably aren't going to get noticeably better till 2027 and 8. So come and enjoy the absolute clown show that will be Scottish politics, and let's be fair, world politics for the next few years. And just be happy in the knowledge that things will get a lot better come closer to the end of the decade. But that's everything I've got for you today. So as usual, thank you very much for watching. Best of luck for those of you in Scotland. I know you're going to need it. And until next time, goodbye.